Of the polls in Michigan close in just about 1 hour from now, 8 o'clock. Political reporter Josh Albertus is here now in the Election Center with what we can expect on today's biggest race, of course, the one for president. Josh.
Big, Juliet, at the top of everyone's mind today, and you just saw me working on it because there's a lot to get done tonight. Latest forecasting from 538 puts this exactly where we'd expect it to be, basically 50-50, but why is that? That's what's in play. Let's break it down. We've been looking at 7 battlegrounds most likely to decide the election. Forecasting puts former President Donald Trump with an edge in many of the southern battlegrounds in Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, and it puts Harris with an edge in Wisconsin and Michigan. And it's 50-50 as of this morning in Nevada and Pennsylvania. Battlegrounds, let's say all of those battlegrounds go the way that they're leaning. That would leave it all down really essentially to the 50-50 state of Pennsylvania. Nevada would be a plus in that scenario for anyone, but it just wouldn't have enough electoral college votes to make that final difference. So that's the state of the race nationally. But here in Michigan, it's a battleground. It's battlegrounds within battlegrounds here. You look at Kent County. We've been talking about this for months. Grand Rapids' Kent County is at the top of that list. Hundreds of thousands of people in the county of President Jerry Ford, historically a Republican fortress. If you look back to just 20 years ago, the GOP really dominated on the presidential level in elections here. It went very narrowly for Barack Obama in 2008, but then somewhat rebounded in 2012. But then you look at the Trump era, slimmer margin the first time, but still a win in 2016. But then a complete reversal the second time when President Joe Biden took this county in 2020 by 6 points. And when we look at this, this really seems to be happening due to the unique makeup of Kent County, right? You have the urban core of Grand Rapids surrounded by more of a shell of those larger suburban areas, a lot of suburban areas that recent presidential results across the nation suggested had moved away in some part from President Trump in the last couple cycles. And then you have the balancing more red, more rural areas on the outer shell of the county. So it has all of those different demographics combined that make it so interesting and such a highly watched national bellwether, a microcosm, if you will. A lot of the swing over the last couple of cycles, as we said, has had to do with that suburban ring around Grand Rapids. You take the township of Ada, for example, just northeast of Grand Rapids in the suburban ring. Back in the early 2000s, similarly, Republicans dominated here on the presidential level, and it largely stayed that way for years. In 2016, there was still a healthy but much lower margin in Ada when Trump first ran, and when he ran a second time in 2020, he ran Ada by just 2 points, and Biden carried the county as a whole. You go from about 40-point margin in 2000 to just 2 in 2020. Large shift there, but it's seemingly not the only one. You take a little bit of a look further to the west in the county, northwest of Grand Rapids in Walker. Similar to Ada Township, it stayed Republican throughout the entire 21st century on the presidential level, but not near where it was back in 2000. You see Al Gore and John Kerry just got walloped in a place like in Walker in 2000 and 2004. You see that dip that happened in a lot of places around the county during Barack Obama's first run in 2008, then rebounding for Romney and keeping steady for Trump in 2016. But 4 years later, after his first term, about a 10% drop in Trump's margin of victory. If you want to win Kent County as a Republican, given the history of the county, its roots, its recent trends, history suggests that you want to see margins similar to what you saw in 2012, not what we were seeing in 2020. Even in the suburbs and surrounding areas where Democrats have been victorious for a few cycles, take East Grand Rapids, for example, that margin only growing in 2020. Same thing in a place like Kentwood as well. A smaller margin, but still kind of the same thing that we're seeing here. You look at, for example, Wyoming as well. That kind of mirrors the overall trends in Kent County as a whole. But bottom line, what we're going to be looking at tonight is whether we see similar margins to something we saw in 2012 or even 2016 to a lesser extent for Republicans, for former President Trump, or if we see a continuation of what we saw in 2020 as the results start to come in. When we look elsewhere in the state, we're going to be looking at areas like those areas where we might see large early voting dumps. Places like, if you take a look, for example, Detroit in Wayne County, where a big portion of early votes, absentee votes, have been pre-processed. They're just waiting to be tabulated there. Or in a place like Ann Arbor, just to the west of that, what we might see there there in some of those larger counties, or Kalamazoo County, for example, where we might see those larger numbers come in right after 8 p.m. tonight, what we might see there. So there's a lot that we're going to be taking a look at tonight, that we're going to be tracking both in that suburban ring of Kent County, as we mentioned, but also across the state, as we're looking to see these results come in just about an hour or so. But for now, we're going to send it back to you, Juliet.